Hello, my name is Andrew Brown, and I have the honor of being the Master of King David's Lodge for its 150th year. I'd like to welcome you to our Sesquicentennial celebration of King David's Lodge, number 209, Free and Accepted Masons of the State of California. Our program this afternoon will feature various presentations and a live video from Most Worshipful John Tronner, Grand Master of the State of California. I would now like to welcome Worshipful Christian Marano, Past Master, who will give us our invocation.
Great Architect of the universe, Creator of all things, we thank you for this opportunity of digital socialization during this time of physical separation. We whose lives are inconvenienced by the strict public health measures pray for all those who risk theirs in the front lines of the several crises and calamities that afflict our communities. As we celebrate the 150th anniversary of the founding of this King David's Lodge number 209, Free and Accepted Masons, we are reminded that our gentle craft benefits not only her members, but the entire family of humankind. We ask that you continue to guide us, O Lord, with the light of wisdom. Grant us sustaining strength. Impart upon us the spirit of harmony, that we may, with one heart and mind, continue to serve all your creations according to your grand design. Bestow upon our leaders, O merciful God, the seal of your approval, granting unto them grace to be compassionate with pure and steadfast affection. Amen.
We will now have a presentation of the flag of our country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brothers, family and friends, and members of the community. Though Masonry has existed in some form in San Luis Obispo since 1860, 2020 marks the 150th anniversary of King David's Lodge, which was founded on the basis of bringing men across our region together and uniting them under a common purpose. Masonry unites men of all backgrounds, colors, sects, and creeds, and it is this diversity that makes the fraternity stronger. One of my favorite quotes that illustrates this is by Rudyard Kipling, himself a Mason, in which he states, "I was secretary for some years of the Lodge of Hope and Perseverance, number 782, English Constitution, which included brethren of at least 4 different creed. I was entered by a member of the Brahma Samaj, a Hindu, passed by a Mohammedan, and raised by an Englishman. Our Tyler was an Indian Jew. We met, of course, on the level." You may hear Masons refer to meeting on the level, and this may be an odd turn of phrase for those unfamiliar with the fraternity, but it stems from the concept that all objects are the same distance from a common surface. In practice, this reminds us that no matter what position we hold or have held, no matter our wealth or worldly honors, we are and must treat each other as equals. King David's Lodge has accomplished much in its 150 years, and while it is important to reflect upon our past and our accomplishments, let us not rest upon our laurels and forget to look towards the future. As a fraternity, it is our duty to set and lead by example and to remain a pillar of our community. 2020 marks a significant milestone in the history of King David's Lodge, but it has also presented us with historical challenges. We face an ongoing worldwide pandemic, financial instability, and racial injustice. I believe that the tenets of Freemasonry and the members of this lodge can help lead our community through these trying times and serve as a beacon of hope and leadership. Though 2020 has brought with it great obstacles, it has also encouraged us to find new ways to connect. At King David's, we have endeavored to increase our digital presence and connection with each other, which has led to us receiving greetings from past master and current charity steward of Temple Lodge number 4929 in Warwickshire, England, who sent their hearty and warmest greetings regarding our Sesquicentennial celebration. Lastly, I would like to recognize the officers of our concordant Masonic bodies. San Luis Chapter number 62, Royal Arch, Masons, High Priest, Worshipful David Koss. San Luis Obispo Council number 38, Royal and Select Masters, Illustrious Master Dean Clark. San Luis Obispo Commandery number 27, Knights Templar. Commander, Worshipful Robert Betancourt. Santa Lucia Chapter number 107, Order of Eastern Star, Worthy Matron Mary Smith and Worthy Patron David Tosh. Five Cities Shrine Club, President Scott Pace. San Luis Obispo Scottish Rite Club, President Robert Sachs. Central Coast Assembly number 92, International Order of the Rainbow for Girls, Worthy Advisor, Jessica. Would also like to welcome Worshipful Dave Chesebro, past master, who will now give us a pre-recorded tour of our historic lodge building.
Hi, my name is David Chesebro. I'm a past master of King David's Lodge, number 209, who we are celebrating the Sesquicentennial today. Where I am standing right now is the foyer entrance into the San Luis Obispo Masonic Center in downtown San Luis Obispo. This is the home of King David's Lodge, as well as several York Rite bodies in the Order of Eastern Star and a Rainbow Chapter. Yeah, I certainly welcome you to be here today. When this building was built dedicated in 1913, it was had two tenants. And interestingly enough, I happen to have a 107-year-old yardstick right here, and I'd like to just share something with it. Just for your information, on this side of the building, the tenant was San Luis Obispo Furniture Company. On the other side, it was the telephone company, where the operators would actually sit there and be plugging in different wires in order to connect phones. It was certainly not automated at that point. But anyway, this yardstick is a piece of swag from San Luis Obispo Furniture Company, and it says San Luis Furniture Company, new Masonic Hall building. Cheap rent, large stock, expert workmen. Just to let you know that this building was built to not just serve Masons. This building was built to serve the community of San Luis Obispo, and it still does today. It hosts many, many different events that are Masonic and non-Masonic. With that being said, I would like to lead you up the stairs into the first floor of the Masonic building. Our first stop is right at the top of the stairs that we just came up, and we find ourselves in what originally was called and still very much is the reception hall. This is where, after installations for all of the bodies, the officers would come out and be received as people filed from the lodge room into the dining room. This is a very big hall. You wouldn't believe how big of a room this really is, but it is simply a hall. Some of the interesting things in this room, or one of the most interesting, is actually this print over here, this photograph of a very distinguished brother in San Luis Obispo history. His name is Walter Adrians. And Brother Adrians was a 4-time past master of this lodge. He was a dispatcher for the Southern Pacific Railroad. He also, at the time this building was built in 1913, was the president of the Masonic Hall Association. And he is basically the ramrod of getting this building built. Because of his relationship to the Southern Pacific Railroad, we'll find when we go upstairs that it was very important to him that this lodge or this building served railroad men who were Masons that would stop and lay over in San Luis Obispo. I think we will now file our way on into the dining room. This room is our dining room. As you can see, it is quite empty. There's not anything going on in here. On a day like today, on a normal day like today, with the celebration of the consequence of the Sesquicentennial, I'll learn how to say that word sometime next year. It would be bustling. There would be tables set up. There would be food being served. There would be laughter and old friends meeting and new friends being made. It is a shame, but this is what we have today. And I hope you see the beauty of this room, because our brethren and all of our members truly love this room. You see, look behind me, you'll see a painting that we had done in early 2000s. It depicts a number of Masonic events and a number of Masonic stories and persona. It was done by a brother who was at the time not a brother, Richard Maniputti, and he and his wife actually painted this for us right here on the wall. And he has since decided to become a Mason and is a very important brother amongst us. Other than this is what we have today, this is pretty much everything in this room. Well, now I'd like to welcome you into the King David's Lodge Room. We've had this lodge room for, as I said, 107 years. Many of the accoutrements in this room are original. If you look at the wallpaper, that is original wallpaper. It's leather, and it is painted to depict the tall cedars of Lebanon, a very important Masonic feature. The furniture that you see, the altar, the chairs, the chairs in the east, are all original chairs to King David's Lodge. They're older than this building. They were in the previous 2 lodge buildings that King David's owned. King David's and the concordant bodies that were also part of the organization. If you notice, there's The seating is new. It's new theater seating. It's absolutely wonderful. It replaced old theater seating that was part of an old theater out of Cal Poly that was put in here, and I'm glad we don't have it anymore. It's lovely to have this new material. Anyway, this is our lodge room. One of the features that needs to be pointed out is this beautiful oculus that's up here. It is indeed one of the most beautiful features of this building. It has had some maintenance issues. We've been struggling with it, but we're going to have that fixed, and it's going to be a totally wonderful feature when we finally get that conquered. Now let's go on into the assembly room, the room where everybody would get together and meet before a meeting. Now I'd like to welcome you into the assembly room. This is the room that we would basically meet, gather together, and then find our way into the meeting or the event in the dining room, depending on what the occasion is. When this room was first built, when the building was first built, it basically housed 2 pool tables and some spittoons. What it accomplished was, and we'll get to it a little bit later, I think I mentioned that Walter Adriance was a dispatcher with the Southern Pacific Railroad, and he welcomed railroad men in that were Masons when they changed trains here in San Luis Obispo. And the pool tables were essentially an opportunity for them they would actually come here and stay in this building. And when they were here, they had entertainment, and they could meet, and then they could talk, they could play some cards. They probably knew each other, but they would get to make crews from the south, the south and the north would come together at this location. So they made new friends as well. The interesting thing about the spittoons is that was probably the most controversial thing that happened when this building was originally built, because the Eastern Star, who was a part owner of this building when it was made, they definitely participated in its construction, absolutely did not want spittoons in this room. And the guys were like, well, of course we have to have spittoons, otherwise we'll have it all over the floor. So anyway, it was resolved, obviously, and you won't find any spittoons, ashtrays, or any other tobacco usage happening in this building at this day and age. Had a beautiful fireplace. This fireplace was operational in 1913. If you'll notice behind me, I don't know if you can quite see it, but there's an elevator here. The elevator was put in the mid-1980s in order to basically help our aging brethren that could not climb that set of stairs that you saw us come up. It was very difficult to do, and it also helped us meet ADA requirements in order to make this building available to the public. It's a lovely elevator. When we get upstairs, I'm going to show you something else about elevators in this building. But anyway, this is the assembly room, and as you can see, it's been remodeled to be a lovely place just to sit and talk and converse. I'm going to head into the library. This room is what was originally designed as the library. It has since become a meeting room, and if you'll also notice, there's no stacks on the walls. You will find photographs of past masters of this lodge, dating from 1870, Michael Henderson, all the way up to, well, not quite present, but the current master's photograph is in the Tyler's room. This is where a lot of heavy-duty decisions get made by the executive committee and by the Hall Association and by the lodge trustees. With that being said, well, let's go upstairs. Well, on our way up the stairs, I'm going to stop briefly on this landing and acknowledge Estero Lodge number 719, that it basically is a consolidated lodge, and it's consolidated with King David's in 2005. These are the past masters, as you can see. Starts off in 1952 with Samuel Voradori, and ends up down the way here. So anyway, it's important that we recognize all of these past masters, because they're all extremely important. And the lodge that they had in Morro Bay, of which I was a member, was extremely successful for a long time, for over 50 years. So anyway, I will just wanted to take a break and stop and see that. We'll now continue on up the floor, up the stairs. I'll welcome you to the very tip-top floor of King David's building. It was originally built as a boarding house for the railroad workers, the railroad crews that I was talking to you about. There are basically half a dozen rooms, but two guys in bunks. They would double up bunks, and they could actually for a few pennies could spend the night here and get a good night's rest and not have to go to some flop house near the railroad station. And it was extremely important. And if you look at these rooms, most of them are used for offices and storage now, but it was a great place to stay. As we move into the other room over here, into the armory, I'll show you where they actually had a little kitchenette where they could prepare meals without using the big dining room down in the dining room. It was a lovely opportunity for Masons to stay. And it's interesting, I mentioned Walter Adrians and his connection to the railroad and how important it was for him to provide this for the railroad crews. At the same time this building was built, there was a set of cottages on Santa Rosa Street called Adrian's Court. It was built in 1913, and its primary use was to house railroad crews as well. It was something that I don't know how if it was associated with the lodge or not, but it was basically another facility that he had constructed to take care of railroad men. With that being said, let's go on into the armory, and you can see as we go in this room how important it was for the other bodies to be involved in it. This basically is a locker room for San Luis Obispo Commandery, number 27. And it is an armory, believe it or not. We are now in San Luis Obispo Commandery, number 27's armory, which really is nothing more than a locker room. But inside these lockers, you're going to find uniforms, commandery uniforms, swords, full regalia to meet as a commandery. San Luis Obispo Commandery has been around for, well, probably 145 years. I believe they started up in either 1875 or 1880. I'm not sure. So there's a long history of York Rite Masonry in this building, and this is one manifestation of that. If you look behind over here, you'll see a set of double doors. That's where the kitchenette that I was describing earlier is located. There's a men's room back here, and this basically there's storage in the old bedrooms. There's just couple more little things that I'd like to show you if you'll follow me. One of the really interesting things about this building is the attention to detail. If you'll notice, the doorknobs on all of the doors have a compass and square. They're totally cast in brass, and they're absolutely gorgeous. But this little room right here, something you don't see very much anymore anywhere, is right now it is Rainbow Room number 10, which is a storage room for our rainbow chapter. But if you, assembly, excuse me. If you open this door, you'll see it's all wallpapered. And it's probably, what, a 6x6 room, maybe a little bit bigger. And this was basically a coaching room that the members, the candidates and the officers could meet with their coaches and come up here, close the door, and sit down and have the privacy that they needed in order to learn our ritual, which was, at the time this building was built, was totally mouth to ear. Just an interesting facet, there's another one of these just down the way here, but I just wanted to share that with you. This is an interesting feature of this building that I almost forgot to tell you. But if you stand against the rail right here, you can see all the way to the ground floor, and you can see all the way to the top. And it's about a 10 by 6 foot square. And it was originally going to be the location of the elevator for this building. And by the time, it was obviously deferred because of costs, but by the time they were ready to build it, it was essentially the building could not withstand it because of earthquakes. Structurally was not going to work. But anyway, this shaft right here, and if you look down, it comes right up through the middle of the stairs, right off of the foyer, was going to be the access to the different floors through this building. Just an interesting anecdote. Well, I'd very much like to thank all of you for sharing this little tour of our wonderful building in downtown San Luis Obispo. I hope you have enjoyed it and look forward to having you here sometime in the future, because we do love to share this space. Thank you so much.
Our next segment features pre-recorded greetings from the following: Mayor Heidi Harmon of San Luis Obispo, Supervisor John Peschong, SLO County Board of Supervisors, SLO County Sheriff Ian Parkinson, and U.S. Congressman Salud Carbajal.
Hi, this is Heidi Harmon, Mayor of San Luis Obispo, wanting to take a minute to thank the Lodge for all of their years of service, their philanthropy to local nonprofits, providing affordable space for nonprofits and other organizations to meet, by celebrating our first responders with dinners and awards, and being a membership that embraces and celebrates diversity. We strive to be examples of civility and positive action in and for our community, and we appreciate the Lodge joining us in that commitment. Also, just want to note that this is one of the most beautiful and important historical buildings in San Luis Obispo and on the Central Coast. So thank you so much for all that you have done, that you do, and that you will continue to do. You are an integral and essential part of what it is that makes San Luis Obispo such a special place to live.
All right. I want to thank everybody for being there today and celebrating King David's Lodge 150th anniversary. As many of you know, my father was a member of this lodge, and it's a great honor to be able to congratulate you on an incredible longevity of this lodge in the community. They've done some incredible things over the years, as you know. And as most of you know, what you've done for Hawthorne Elementary School has been great, and really helped that school and move that school forward. And also the way you recognize our local fire and police departments with your appreciation events, that I've attended many of those and will continue to attend those in the future. But I just wanted to thank you and congratulate you for the incredible things that you do for the community and being part of our community for the last 150 years.
Well, I first wanted to say congratulations to King David Masonic Lodge, number 209. We've had a great partnership with you over the years in law enforcement. I think it's amazing that you have reached this milestone, and particularly in this community. The partnership that we've had, you've always honored our employees, our law enforcement employees within the county, and it's very much appreciated when You have men and women out there working hard for the community, and an organization like yours recommends or actually honors them in a formal ceremony. And kind of looking over the history, it looks like there's been a connection with Masonic Lodge, with local law enforcement for some time. Matter of fact, going back to 1885 with John Chesney, who was a marshal, and continuing to 1910 with Arthur Cale, who was also a marshal. Then you have the between 24 and 26, William W.J. Dodelson, police chief, and then 27 to 29, Fred Bullinger, who was also a police chief. So great ties to the community, and it just shows the strength of our partnership, but probably more importantly, it shows the strength of your organization. So on behalf of all local law enforcement, and particularly from my office, thank you for all that you do for us and do for the community.
Hello, King David's Lodge. I'm Congressman Carbajal, wishing you a happy 150th anniversary. In your long history, you have been a distinguished presence within the San Luis Obispo community, benefactor to many causes, and have contributed to the extraordinary fabric of this community. Since your inception, Masons have been entrepreneurs and community leaders, steeped in tradition, helping to shape the character and civic landscape of our city, county, state, and country. 150 years after your charter, members today still embody the dedication and the principles the Lodge was founded on, and continues to support many of our most valued institutions in the community. We are so lucky to have such generous and civic-minded Masons in our community, dedicated to the collective enrichment of San Luis Obispo and surrounding communities. While COVID-19 has impacted this important celebration marking this significant milestone in your organization's history, I appreciate that we can still celebrate virtually to commemorate your lodge's 150th years of service and fraternity. I commend King David's Lodge on your adaptability and hope that you will be able to celebrate in person soon. Congratulations again. I look forward to many more years of service.
Worshipful Peter Champion, past master, will now provide a presentation on the history of King David's Lodge.
Greetings from San Luis Obispo and the Brethren of King David's Masonic Lodge. I'm Peter Champion, the past master of King David's Lodge and current district inspector of the Grand Commandery of Knights Templar of California, commonly called the Christian branch of Freemasonry. In 2020, the Masons are celebrating 150 years of King David's Lodge in San Luis Obispo. But slow Freemasonry began a decade before, in 1860, with the formation of San Luis Obispo Lodge number 148. The lodge was barely chartered when what became known as the Great Exodus began. First, with the outbreak of the Civil War, and culminating with the devastating droughts of 1863 through 1865. Over half of the members moved to more fertile areas. The master of the lodge moving to Peru. In 1865, the charter was surrendered, and all the lodge records and regalia were sent to the Grand Lodge of California for safekeeping. Unfortunately, the San Francisco earthquake and conflagration destroyed everything in 1906. San Luis Obispo Lodge number 148 only raised one man as a master mason, but what a singular man. Jose Pacheco Jr. went on to become the first Hispanic United States Congressman and only Hispanic governor of California. Besides lassoing local ruffians and homicidal desperados, he is the only governor to have lassoed a grizzly bear while on horseback, but not the bear that's depicted on our county seal. In 1870, a key date for Freemasons in San Luis Obispo, based because of a funeral. On January 3rd, 1870, Washington Roeblings began construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. That same year, Reverend Hiram Rhodes was sworn in as the first black member of the United States Senate. And suffragette Victoria Woodhull was the first woman to operate a Wall Street brokerage firm. 2 years later, Woodhull was the first woman nominated for president, but she couldn't vote for herself. Her vice presidential running mate was none other than Frederick Douglass. Also in 1870, the United States declared Christmas to be a legal holiday, and the 15th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. Locally, the big 1870 news was the death of a prominent Mason, Alexander Murray. Brother Murray was postmaster in San Luis Obispo, superintendent of schools, the federal tax collector, a Wells Fargo agent, sewing machine salesman, and saloon proprietor. The Tribune newspaper headline labeled his death a public calamity. Alexander was only 36 years of age. Santa Barbara Lodge requested San Simeon Lodge in Cambria to conduct his funeral in San Luis Obispo. Brother Murray had been a member of both lodges. Wagon loads of brothers and their families came from across the Central Coast, from Monterey, San Simeon, Cambria, Morro Bay, Arroyo Grande, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, and Ventura to attend his funeral. Following the funeral service, friends and brothers gathered at the Oddfellows Hall, as there was no Masonic Lodge in SLO. A topic of discussion was the need for a local Masonic Lodge. 1 week later, the papers for Pratt's Lodge were drawn up. At the next week's meeting, it was decided that naming the lodge for the sitting Grand Master, Leonidas Pratt, was not appropriate, and the name King David's was selected based on the biblical story of David's friendship with Jonathan. The Masons of the newly chartered King David's rented meeting space at the Oddfellows Hall until 1874, when they built a temple on Higuera Street near Charro. In 1894, the Masons built a new temple with space for 2 tenants on the corner of Marsh and Charro. The first man raised a Mason in the building was Louis Felix Schinsheimer, later to be master of the lodge and the first Jewish mayor of San Luis Obispo. The membership of King David's during these years reads like a who's who of the prominent men of San Luis Obispo. Levi Radcliffe, Sheriff Stephen Ballou, Dr. William Hayes, Captain James Cass, John Witcher, Frederick Adolphus Dorn, Ralph Edgar Jack, Walter Matthew, and Walter Adrians, many of whom are buried in the cemetery on South Higuera. From 1887 through the start of the Depression in 1929, the uniformed Knights Templars equestrian team was a regular participant in local parades. In 1913, the stolen Mona Lisa was recovered, the modern brassiere was patented, Woodrow Wilson was president. Both Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford were born, and King David's Lodge built its current temple on Marsh near Charro, again with room for 2 tenants on the ground floor, providing income for the lodge's ongoing charities, and bedrooms and baths on the 3rd floor, offering a place of refuge for Masonic railway men during their layovers in San Luis Obispo. The temple's designer was the 3rd of the famous John Davis Hatch architects. When one reads of Hatch and his designs, his works in San Francisco and his work during World War I are always mentioned. But Hatch had SLO connections. His wife was the daughter of a local judge, and the couple were married in San Luis Obispo in 1904. The contractor, Brother William Smith, built numerous structures for William Randolph Hearst, and locally was noted for the historic Dart House on Pacific Street. During World War II, 55 men stationed in SLO or Morro Bay received their Master Mason degrees at King David's at the request of their home lodges in other states. Twice, King David's has had the rare honor of conferring courtesy degrees at the request of foreign Grand Lodges. Once to Brother Jan Lewis of Taiwan, China, and once to Brother Damian Kachlikev, a professor at Cal Poly, visiting from Bulgaria. The formal monthly husband and wife dinners with guest entertainment of magicians, comedians, bands, and dancers that were once a staple during the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s have given way to 2 annual 7-course festive boards, one for St. John the Baptist and one for St. John the Evangelist. Weekly simple fare dinners, karaoke nights, and other such dinners being more the modern norm. Although the brothers and ladies have enjoyed wearing their kilts to enjoy haggis and the bagpipers for Robbie Burns nights in late January. The 3 pillars of Freemasonry are faith, hope, and charity. Nationwide, Masons contribute $2 million each day to charities. King David's Lodge annually donates $30,000 in scholarships and another $50,000 in charitable donations towards helping 2 local schools, the Alicia Ann Rouge Fire Camp for children who were burn victims, Cal Poly sports programs, SLO Hospice, Rainbow Girls, Boy Scouts, the SLO Homeless Shelter, the Rape Crisis Support Center, the Heart Association, Alzheimer's Research, paramedic training, oncology nurses training, and numerous other local charities over the decades. In addition, local Masonic brothers donate individually to a myriad of charities, such as the Scottish Rite Speech Center, the Shriners Children's Hospital, the Knights Templar Eye Foundation, the Grand Masters Literacy Program, the Cryptic Masons Medical Research Foundation, and the Royal Arch Research Assistance Philanthropy. It is our ardent desire that when the Brethren of King David's Lodge hold their bicentennial in 50 years, that the values of brotherly love, charity, and service will be as strong for them as for our SLO brothers who started our lodge 150 years ago. As our commemorative coin reads, Brother Alexander Murray's 1870 funeral inspired 100 years of philanthropy and service. Thank you for joining us in our celebration.
Virtuoso Brynn Albanese will now provide a musical interlude by Mozart.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the San Luis Obispo Masonic Lodge. I am so happy to be part of this amazing project, 150 years of celebration. And when I was asked to do it, and I was asked to play a piece by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, I did not know that he was a Mason, and I did a little bit of reading on the whole subject, and it was fascinating and made it even more real for me. So I chose a piece that will complement the complicated times that we are facing at the moment, being creative and innovative with everything, with art and music and technology all brought together. So I chose the first movement of one of Mozart's violin and piano sonatas in G major because it was just so purely simplistic, perfect for these complicated times that we are in. So I hope you enjoy the first movement of Mozart's G major sonata KV301. Thank you.
The following presentation, showing notable Masonic graves and other related history, is given by Worshipful Robert Betancourt, past master.
So our first founding brother is William Hayes. His marker doesn't actually have any symbolism of Freemasonry on it, although he was a member of the Knights Templar, which is a organization which still exists here in San Luis Obispo. It started in 1886. He was one of the first commanders, and before he came to San Luis Obispo was in the Civil War for the Union side, was a physician, and he actually brought that talent to San Luis Obispo and was one of the first physicians here in the county, and in fact started the General Hospital at that time. He was also a founding member of the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, and he is well regarded as one of the first masters of King David's Lodge in the 1880s. We come next to the marker for James Cass. He lived to the ripe old age of 92. Married here with his wife, who predeceased him by about 3 years. He's actually featured in a photograph. He was also a member of the Knights Templar, and that photograph we have in the lodge shows him at about the age of 89 when the temple itself had just been constructed. So at an Easter observance of the Knights Templar, they had an Easter observance in April of 1914, and he's featured in that photograph. So it's the earliest photograph we have as Masons of our glorious temple building. We were able to take down the awning and put up the facade that says Masonic Temple over our grand doorway. That all comes from the photograph of James Cass. Most people know James Cass as the founding person of the community of Cayucas. We can come next to the gravesite of Walter Murray. Walter Murray does have a couple of very interesting symbols on his grave marker. The hand reaching down from Providence above and to resurrect a brother below. Of course, the square and compass is featured on his grave marker as well. And it had actually suffered some vandalism some years ago, and the brothers of King David's Lodge voted to engage a stonemason to renovate that marker and make it look nice, as befitting a founding member of King David's Lodge. And actually, he was a founding member of a lodge which predated King David's in San Luis Obispo. It was called San Luis Obispo Lodge number 148. It was founded in 1860, but the tensions of the Civil War and a great drought and that caused a lot of people to leave town caused that lodge to surrender its charter, and all records of that were destroyed when they were sent to San Francisco in 1906. The fire and earthquake caused those records to be lost. But the lodge was restored after having been surrendered in 1865, and a new lodge started in 1870. And we're going to talk about that now when we move over to the grave marker of Alexander Murray, Walter's brother. And Alexander followed his brother over from England and came in. First, they met in the Gold Country and had a newspaper together there. And then when they decided to move to the Central Coast by about the mid 1850s, Alexander lived here. He was one of the earliest postmasters at that time. And he passed away in 1870. In May of 1870, there was a funeral. Masons do regard their elder brethren highly, and certainly care about the idea of an afterlife. And so it's customary for Masons to show up for the funerals of their departed brethren and have even a ritual ceremony for such a funeral. And that happened with brothers coming from as far north as San Simeon and as far south as Santa Barbara to San Luis Obispo for this funeral service for Alexander Murray. And you can see the Masonic symbolism right on his grave marker with the Virgin weeping and Father Time standing at her back, patiently unfolding the ringlets of her hair, which reminds us that time, patience, and perseverance will accomplish all things. And so the brethren that were there for Alexander's funeral, along with Walter Murray's brother, decided, we should have a lodge again in San Luis Obispo. And they founded King David's Lodge. They changed the name from the city name that had existed and of course didn't continue. So they came up with the new name of King David's Lodge. That was, by that time, the number was 209. Then we can move over to Michael Henderson is the next Mason to be regarded here. And we see his plaque. That was actually placed by brothers in more recent decades because the brethren, about 1970, I think they were doing a 100th anniversary and determined that the first master of the lodge from 1870 didn't have his own marker out in the cemetery, and so they created it for him. And so you can see reference right on the plaque of Michael Henderson, who was a justice of the peace and an architect back in the 1860s. Was elected and duly served as the first master of King David's Lodge. We can move on from Michael Henderson to R.E. Jack, Robert Edgar Jack. His monument is just a few feet away from Michael Henderson's. He was also a member of the Union Army in the Civil War, just like William Hayes. He served at Gettysburg. We see from a correspondence that he wrote at that time that he indicated being present at Gettysburg. And then he came west and found an opportunity to make his fortune with goats and sheep, and a big property east of town over where is described as Jack Ranch Cafe over by Chelam and Shandon. That was a property that Robert Edgar Jack used and made quite a fortune in wool. And apparently he had observed even in those days that once he had a fine crop of wool-bearing sheep, that he would always have something that would be valuable. And then after he got going with that, then he could turn his hand towards civic government, and he was a mayor of the town of San Luis Obispo, and one of his main accomplishments was bringing the railroad to town, which came to San Luis Obispo in 1894, and which was the same year that he was the master of King David's Masonic Lodge. And so we definitely have a connection with railroad men since that time, and we even have a big, beautiful safe in our basement that says SPRR for Southern Pacific Railroad, and that all came from that era of the railroad men. And Robert W. Jack married into the Hollister family. Nellie Hollister is nearby, and her family relations as well. William Hollister, J.H. Hollister, well-known leaders of the community back in the 1880s and into the turn of the century. And then the last to be featured today would be Frederick Adolphus Dorn, who is responsible for commissioning the huge white granite pyramid at the south end of the section of the cemetery that's known as the Oddfellows Cemetery, or the Masonic section of the San Luis Cemetery. And it's actually placed up on a small hill that's basically covers a serpentine rock outcropping, so that there's enough mass below that granite pyramid to support its weight. If it was over in the section where all the graves are, it would not have, the ground is too soft there to support the massive weight of that granite pyramid, which is about 27 feet tall. Fred Dorn was one of the first masters of King David's Lodge. He served as a master in 1895. He was one of the first district attorneys of the county. He married Cora Russell, which was a well-known and affluent name in those days locally. But unfortunately, their first child was the pregnancy was not good, and the child died as shown on the marker on May the 23rd of 1905, and then Cora died 3 days later. So we surmised from that there were complications of childbirth that took both the mother and the son, or the namesake, Fred Jr. And so Fred, our brother, was anticipating being buried there as well, and they left 2 concrete blocks sitting out for him to someday be buried there. But of course, after some years, he remarried and was interred decades later up in Northern California. So our lodge several years ago arranged for those blocks to be placed in and sealed. Fred Dorn also, as you can see on the sidewalk around the monument, was a member of not only the Masons, but also the Oddfellows. The 3 rings of the Oddfellows are seen on one side. And NSGW, Native Sons of the Golden West, was another organization that he belonged to with pleasure and pride. So that is an overview of some of the interesting individuals of the King David's history, at least going back to those early years after the community was founded. In any event, those are all of my comments about some of the luminaries of King David's Lodge. And it's been my pleasure as one of their Masonic descendants and a past master myself of King David's Lodge, about which I'm very proud. So I'm Robert Betancourt, and I thank you very much today for your attention.
We will now have a presentation of the role of past masters. would like to introduce Worshipful Rod Smiley, Past Master and Inspector of the 534th Masonic District, who will present the Sesquicentennial Certificate from Grand Lodge and also introduce our Assistant Grand Lecturer, Robert Beeson.
Good afternoon, brethren. I'm Rod Smiley. I'm Inspector of the 534th Masonic District in Division 5. And today is my honor and distinct pleasure to present to King David's Lodge number 209 their 150th Anniversary Award on behalf of the Grand Lodge of California and the Most Worshipful John E. Tronner, Grand Master of Masons in California. I'll now read the certificate. Whereas, by dispensation granted on June the 16th, 1870, sundry brethren were empowered and authorized by the Grand Master to form and open a lodge after the manner of free and accepted Masons, and whereas, after working for a time under this dispensation, and being found worthy and well qualified, a charter was granted to these brethren under the name and number of King David's Lodge number 209. And whereas the Lodge has well served the purposes of Masonry for more than 150 years, know ye that in recognition of this anniversary, the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of California presents this certificate in grateful token of the fraternal affection with which this lodge is regarded, and in acknowledgement of the honor it has contributed to Freemasonry in this jurisdiction. It is signed by the Grand Secretary, Alan Casselou, and the Most Worshipful John E. Tronner, Grand Master of Masons in California. It is now my pleasure to introduce Worshipful Robert Beeson III, Assistant Grand Lecturer of Division 5.
Hello, I'm Worshipful Robert G. Beeson III, a past master of Simi Valley Lodge number 806 in Simi Valley, California. I'm the Assistant Grand Lecturer of Division 5, and it is now my pleasure to introduce the Grand Master of Masons in California. A second-generation Mason, Worshipful Brother John Edward Tronner was raised a Master Mason in Madison Lodge number 23 in Grass Valley on March 25th, 1997. He served as Master of the Lodge in 2001. In 2006, Madison Lodge presented him with the Hiram Award for his continued and distinguished service to the Lodge. He is also a member of Nevada Lodge number 13 in Nevada City. Brother Tronner has served the Grand Lodge of California as an inspector and as an assistant grand lecturer. He was an inspector for 5 years and was appointed assistant grand lecturer of Division 2 in 2014. Brother Tronner served on the Ritual Committee and has served on all Grand Lodge constitutional boards. In addition to this service, Brother Tronner is active in the concordant and appendant bodies, including York Rite and Scottish Rite. He received the 32nd degree Knight Commander Court of Honor in the Scottish Rite Valley of Sacramento. John is also a member of the Knights York Cross of Honor, a past puissant sovereign of the Cross and Crown Conclave of the Red Cross of Constantine, the York Rite Sovereign College of North America, the Holy Royal Arch Knight Templar Priests, and the Allied Masonic degrees. He is also a member of the Sacramento chapter of the National Sojourners and a chapter advisor for North Star chapter of DeMolay. John studied business administration at Sierra College and California State University, Chico, and has a degree in business administration. In 1976, he joined the Nevada County Sheriff's Department, beginning a 31-year career in law enforcement, ending as undersheriff. John retired from the Sheriff's Department in 2007. A fifth-generation rancher, John and his wife Dana live in Rough and Ready, a small township located near Grass Valley in the heart of the Motherlode. They have 4 adult children and 6 granddaughters. Brothers and friends, it is my distinct honor to introduce the Grand Master of Masons in California, the most worshipful John E. Tronner.
Good afternoon, everybody. Most worshipful ladies, friends, brethren. I know there's Grand Lodge officers on. I know there is one or two past Grand Masters watching. What an absolute great day to be a Mason. First, Worshipful Brown, allow me to commend you on an extraordinary way to have this celebration. I so wish that we could have been there in person like we had planned for such a long time, but COVID has changed all of our plans. So here we are celebrating your 150th anniversary. You know, when I get a chance to celebrate with a lodge with a time such as you have, it makes me want to reflect. I reflect on all of the good things that has happened in that lodge. Now, every lodge has ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, but look back on what that lodge, your lodge, has accomplished in 150 years, going way back to when you started at San Luis Obispo 148. We stand on the shoulders of our forefathers. By the fact that you are alive and well and vibrant and a strong part of the community of San Luis Obispo, you honor your forefathers. And my theme this year was to honor all of our forefathers in our great state of California by highlighting our Grand Lodge and the roots of our Grand Lodge coming from the Mason immigrants. You are no different. You may not have had a gold rush down on the Central Coast, but I assure you, your Lodge 209 is a beacon and sets a standard for lodges up and down this great state to emulate and be envious of. Allow me to also thank the presentations today. David, outstanding. The pride that you have in that lodge is self-evident. Peter, thank you for your history. Robert, it would not be complete without a tour of your wonderful cemetery artifacts, and including the Dorn Pyramid. And the violin interlude was simply moving. So my brothers, congratulations. I would hope that you hang that beautiful anniversary certificate in a prominent place and view upon it with pride, and make sure that you bring your applicants and your candidates and your new Masons before it. Let them soak in the history that that lodge represents. You truly have one of the most beautiful buildings and lodges in the entire state of California. You have nothing but pride to have. So, Worshipful Master, on behalf of the Grand Lodge of California and on my wife Dana and I personally, I'd like to present to you my lodge gift. I know I'm not there to hand it to you and shake your hand, but I had commissioned a beautiful bronze statue, the iconic statue of a kneeling miner, representing the immigrant Mason miners that were all of our forefathers, and I put it on a marble base. It has an inscription, and it comes with a beautiful wooden case. I will get it to you if it means that, I hope that I can drive there soon. And if I can't do it that way, then it will come in the mail. But I hope that you take it, you present it in your lodge somewhere, and it will remind you and the members of the lodge of our time together today. Again, I want to thank Jay in the background. I want to thank you personally, Worshipful Master, and all the brethren for having such a wonderful event today, even if it's virtually because of the calamity that we're facing with COVID. A challenging time, but here we again. Masons step up, they adapt, and they overcome. So thank you, God bless you, and I wish nothing but success for another 150 years for San Luis Obispo 209. Thank you. And King David.
Worshipful Christian Marano, past master, will now provide our benediction, which will conclude our program for this afternoon.
Supreme Architect of the universe, as King David's Lodge continues to embark past this sesquicentennial milestone, we ask that you guide her members in the way of justice, peace, and mercy, that they may, with one heart and mind, all the days of their lives, be enriched with the tokens of your everlasting favor. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for our virtual sesquicentennial celebration, and have a wonderful afternoon.